Hello and welcome to the Accessibility in Gaming podcast, the podcast about the accessibility, successes, and setbacks of all things gaming. I'm your host, Chelby Farley, also known as TheBlindGaymer. In this episode, I will be talking about Tetris Effect Connected, which is easily my favorite game at the time of recording this podcast. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am legally blind. I have been since I was born. I won't go into the medical mumbo-jumbo here because most people would be bored to death with all of that information. But basically, being legally blind, I have almost no vision. I can see shapes and some color, but I am partially colorblind, and I cannot see detail. My vision is so bad that my mom could be standing right in front of me, and I would have no idea if it was her or someone else. If you would like to get a more in-depth idea of what my vision is like, I will leave a link in the show notes to a video that I made a few years ago with the help of my mom that will show you roughly what it's like through my eyes. I also have severe depression and anxiety, which you may not think would impact my ability to play games, but it really does with certain games. Actually, I'll get into that with Tetris Effect Connected in just a minute, but I don't think people realize that mental illness can actually affect aspects of playing video games. So I hope to shed some light on that today. But that's just a little bit about me. You may not have heard of Tetris Effect Connected. It is pretty new as far as I'm aware. It just came out on Nintendo Switch yesterday, and I don't think it's been out on PC for that long either. But basically it is Tetris with a twist. And I would say the best way I can think to describe it is your gameplay affects the music and the visuals, and the music also affects your gameplay. It's kind of a give and take in a way, so it's kind of hard to explain. You really have to kind of see it for yourself to get the full idea of what I am meaning. But each time you move a block, it makes music. And when you drop a block, it makes music. And when you clear lines or get a Tetris, that all affects the music. But then also, if the music gets to a part where the song is going to speed up, then the blocks will fall faster. So you placing blocks and moving blocks will contribute music notes, basically, different elements to the song. But then the speed of the song also determines how fast your blocks naturally fall. If you haven't played other versions of Tetris, basically you have different shaped blocks. I'm not even going to bother using all the correct terminology because I don't remember it and I don't ever use it anyway. I just call them all blocks. But you have falling blocks of various shapes, and you have to make solid lines of those blocks, and when you do, they disappear. And you basically are trying to clear as much as you can without filling up your playing field with blocks all the way up to the top. So, Tetris Effect Connected is that, but then also has the music component and some very trippy visuals to go along with it. I am absolutely obsessed with this game. It is amazing. I literally have not slept since sometime yesterday because I was awake all night playing it on the Switch and then switched over to recording podcast episodes. So I absolutely love it. It does have its setbacks as far as accessibility goes, and I will go over those in a minute, but I love this game so much. As a visually impaired person, audio is extremely, extremely important to me in a video game. The audio is what I'm getting most of because I can't see very well. So for me, the visuals don't do much for me, but the audio is what gets me pumped up and in the zone or focused or whatever you want to call it. It's what immerses me in the game rather than the visuals. So I love games with good audio, and Tetris Effect Connected is amazing when it comes to the audio. The music is absolutely awesome. I actually listen to the music even when I'm not playing the game. I just turn it on Amazon Music and listen to that while I'm doing other things because it's just so good. Especially if I'm playing on my computer and I have my headphones on, then I really get the full effect, and it's amazing. And the visuals, while I can't see well, the visuals are so vivid and bright and colorful that I am still able to enjoy the effects and get something out of it even with my limited vision, because it's just so vivid and immersive. And so that combined with the absolutely fantastic audio, and then also combined with the fact that it's Tetris, and I love Tetris, it's just, I would say it's my favorite game right now. It took first place over Phasmophobia, and that is surprising because I love Phasmophobia, but as of right now, this game is my favorite. I'm sure it will change when another game comes out, but this is my favorite. So much that I got it on the computer, and then when I saw it was coming out on the Switch, I had to get it on the Switch as well, so that way I would have a more portable version to take with me. So, yes, this game has its accessibility issues, don't get me wrong, but I absolutely love it and highly recommend it if you can work around the accessibility issues. Speaking of which, we might as well get right on into those. What I noticed almost as soon as I launched the game on my PC is that the font is tiny. So tiny. I ended up pulling out my phone and using the camera on my phone to zoom in on the text on the screen. And even then, it was still hard to read, but it was at least doable. Whereas without it, I had literally no idea what I was clicking on. So that is a huge issue. I love this game, I do, but the text size being so small made getting used to the game very hard, because even though there's a tutorial on how to play the game, since I can't see the text that's on screen, I couldn't tell what buttons I needed to press to do certain things. So I ended up having to kind of button mash to figure out how to start zoning and how to soft drop versus hard drop and rotate and all of those things. It made getting familiar with the game tricky, especially on the PC version. On the Switch, it wasn't as bad because when I was playing in handheld, I just used the built-in zoom feature that's on the Switch and was able to zoom in and see what I needed to press. I will say, even when I was zoomed in all the way as far as it would go, there were still things that I couldn't read, but I was able to kind of figure it out based on context clues. But the zoom did at least help, which was nice. And after a while, I ended up putting my Switch in the dock because it died. And I just stood in front of my TV and played it in docked mode. And of course, a giant TV makes things a lot bigger. So I was able to see the text on there much easier. But in handheld mode and on the PC, the text is just way too small. So, of course, the easiest way to fix this is allowing the option to change font size in the game. Not necessarily making it larger by default, because not everyone likes a large font, but just having the option available for people who may need it to make the text larger would be really great, because I would have been able to get into the swing of things faster if I had been able to see how to use the controls and interact with the blocks and other aspects of the game. So having like a slider or something to make the font size bigger would be great. Or my personal favorite of the two options would be text-to-speech. Basically, what this would mean is anything that is written out on screen in print would be read out loud to the player. So, for example, in the tutorial screens, instead of having to try to squint and smush my nose up to the screen trying to figure out what stuff says and how to play, it would just be read out loud, and I would just listen to the instructions rather than trying to read them myself. This would be amazing. You will hear me mention text-to-speech as a feature I would like probably in most, if not every episode of this podcast, because it would be so helpful. But that is another option that I would love to see in order to make the text on screen accessible to blind and visually impaired people. Going along with the font being too small, something else that I found to be too small was the playing field, where your blocks actually go. I am sure a lot of this is because the creators wanted more of the background visuals and stuff to be visible, but having such a small playing area makes it really hard to see where my blocks are and what position they're in and where they're going to end up landing. Because since the area is so small, sometimes it looks like my block is going to land in one spot, but it turns out to land in another spot because my vision was just playing tricks on me and I couldn't see well enough to tell where it was actually going to land. So it's definitely an added challenge. If you want the added difficulty factor, then the small playing field is definitely a way to get that. But I have a hard enough time seeing all the stuff going on anyway, and then for the area to be small on top of that, it just makes it difficult. So, of course, easy solution would be to either make it bigger by default or give players the option to size up the playing area. The other option is to increase the zoom capability. I absolutely love that the game has a zoom feature. I still don't know how to use it on the PC. I haven't figured out what the controls are for that yet, but I figured it out on the Switch, and it definitely came in handy, but it did not zoom in enough for me. It helped, but it was still hard for me to see as well as I think I could if it had been zoomed in more. Again, this is probably so that you can see the visuals and stuff in the background, and I do absolutely love the visuals. It's amazing, but I would like to also at least kind of be able to see where I'm placing blocks. So even if the playing field was kept the same size, if the zoom capability was increased, then it wouldn't necessarily matter what size the playing field is, because you could just zoom in and get as close as you needed to. But even with the playing field being too small, I mean, I can make do. I still love the game. Like I said, it's my favorite game right now. So it makes it a lot harder and harder on my eyes, but it's worth it. Sticking with the theme of things being too small, the meter that represents your progress towards zoning is so hard to see. When I played on the Switch in docked mode, I could see it okay, but in handheld and on the PC, there was no way. I had no idea what my progress was. I didn't know if I was like halfway completed or if I had anything in the meter at all or if it was full. I had no idea, and I was missing out on bonuses and benefits because I can't see my progress. So again, the one option is to just make it bigger. That would be helpful. Just make it larger so that I can see, or other visually impaired people can see progress easier. But something that I think would be awesome, and I think even sighted people would benefit from, is audio progress updates. So, like, as you're playing, if you fill up your meter, say 25%, you would get an audio alert saying 25% complete, or even some kind of tone, even if it's not a verbal thing, but like something incorporated into the music that is obviously notifying you about zoning. Just something to let you know how full your meter is would be awesome. Like I said, I think even people who can see fine would benefit from having an audio announcement of what their zoning percentage is at. So that would be so nice. Alright, changing it up a little bit, another issue is the contrast. On the darker levels, it's not too bad. Usually the contrast is really good, actually, for the most part. I don't have problems with the contrast when the background is dark. Not necessarily when the background is just dead, like nothing's going on or whatever, but when it's darker effects and themes and stuff, the contrast is still really good. But on certain levels, like there's one level that has kind of beachy, like ocean visuals in the background, and then the blocks are made to match that, of course, but it's just all very light colored, and it's hard to tell what is a block and what is, say, a tree in the background, or some grass, or whatever the case may be, whatever happens to be behind the board at the time. So there's not too many levels that I've encountered in journey mode that have this issue, but there are some that the contrast is so bad. I have such a hard time, and every time I get to those sections, I'm like, oh, here we go again. Because it's just so hard to see. But fortunately, it's not every level. Most of the time, I don't have any major issues with contrast, but there are some for sure. And then lastly, something that's not just blindness specific is the issue of overstimulation. Many people that are blind or visually impaired or have autism or other sensory related conditions can get overstimulated very easily. When someone is overstimulated, they are getting too much sensory input. Another word that I commonly use for this is sensory overload. I typically say overstimulated, but you may hear me say sensory overload as well. Basically, you're just getting too much information bombarding your senses all at one time. And this game, while I love it and absolutely enjoy playing it, it is so overstimulating. Between the crazy visuals and the intense audio and then the stress of the game itself, it's just a lot of things bombarding my senses all at one time. This game definitely gets overstimulating, for me at least. I don't know necessarily with other people, but I've definitely found that it can get overstimulating. It's usually not severe enough to make me stop playing the game, although there's been times where it's gotten close, but it hasn't gotten to where it made me stop playing the game. But it's definitely there, it's definitely noticeable, and takes some of the enjoyment out of the game. This can definitely be an accessibility issue, because if someone has some kind of sensory condition, they may not feel comfortable playing or may not be able to play Tetris Effect Connected because it's so overstimulating and can cause a lot of anxiety and negative emotions. This is one that I can see being a very big issue for a wider range of people, because a lot of people, even if they don't necessarily have words to describe the experience, a lot of people probably get overstimulated, and I could see this game causing that to occur. A solution for this could be to have a toggle for simple music or simple backgrounds. If someone is feeling more prone to being overstimulated, they can turn on simple backgrounds or simple visuals and still get some of the cool effects of the game, but not have to worry about having, say, an anxiety attack because they got so overstimulated and overwhelmed by the game. I mean, I know it would take away from the main feature of the game, but I feel like more people would be able to play the game if they had a way to make it not so overstimulating. So those are the big issues that I have found with Tetris Effect Connected as far as accessibility goes. The font being too small, the playing field being too small, the zone meter being too small, the contrast being poor in some situations, and it possibly being overstimulating to some people. But I still love the game. It's still, like I keep saying, it's my favorite game at the moment, and I will be playing a lot more of it here pretty soon, probably even later today, depending on how soon I crash after recording podcast episodes. But would I recommend this to other disabled gamers? Possibly. If you can handle loud, intense music and very bright and flashy visuals and not get too anxious or overstimulated, and if you can manage with the small font and whatnot, then sure, I would say absolutely give it a shot. It's an amazing game. But if you struggle with anxiety and get overstimulated fairly easily, then I would say probably not. I mean, you could always give it a try, but I could definitely see it causing someone severe anxiety. If you want to see me play this for myself, I have a video on my gaming YouTube channel that you can check out. I may have more up fairly soon, but as of recording this, I have one video up that's over an hour long of me playing on the PC, and I hope to live stream it on Twitch soon as well. So there will be plenty of opportunities to watch me play it and also get a chance to ask me questions while I play it and see if it would work for you based on your specific needs. But even if you don't catch me on a live stream playing it, you can always contact me on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the things. If you have a game that you would like me to cover in a future episode, please send me an email at accessibilityingaming@gmail.com or contact me on social media at Chelby Farley, CHELBY FARLEY, or TheBlindGaymer, TheBlindGaymer. Also, if you are a game developer and you would be interested in me testing out your game to see how accessible it is for current players or for an upcoming release, please send me an email as well at accessibilityingaming@gmail.com. I would love to work with you and help make your games more accessible. If you haven't already, check out the other two podcasts that were released today as well. One is about The Sims 4 and the other is about Phasmophobia. Also, check back next week when I will discuss Fall Guys, whether its accessibility flies high above the rest or falls flat on its face.